A great blasphemy dwells within the frozen heart of Kinrangr's forest. Something sinister gnaws at the land. A biting chill grabs hold of the fief. Where once dense thickets and lush verdure teemed with abundant game, now only the petrified bark of ice-blown trees remain. The jewel of Mornstead lies shattered and tarnished, its people dead or worse, and a creature of depravity rules over the lifeless husk, its crooning echoes across empty haunts. Kinrangr hobbles on as a tragedy, a reminder of what may when infernal forces stir. Far has it fallen. In days now past, one man's desperation born from love nonetheless pushed him to profanity and unleashed a terrible curse upon Kinrangr, the shivering winds of which entombed his followers in blankets of frozen death. Now, the perennial leaves have withered, the rushing streams have arrested, and the unhallowed moans of curse-bound dead rise muffled above silent snows. Kinrangr is no more, cast into oblivion, yet the mystery of its fall remains. What happened to this most cherished of Mornstead fiefs? Who raised this damnable curse, and for what purpose? To understand, we must trudge through windy embankments thick with snowfall and uncover the origins of witchcraft that holds the Fief of the Chill curse in death's icy grip. All right, let's dive in. Before suffering befell Kinrangr, before permanent frost and snow, it was a land of untrammeled beauty and unbound growth. Situated in Mornstead's budding hinterlands, it was a wild region, isolated by topography and distance. Those intrepid travelers willing to risk dangerous mountain passes were greeted with pristine serenity. A thick copse of colorful trees protected rivers whose lazy streams fed the nearby waters. For much time, these natural lands lay unsettled and uncultivated. But, in an unnamed year surrounding Mornstead's consolidation and the kingdom's early days, royal decree allowed fierce bands of nomadic warriors from the eastern reaches of Udarangr to colonize the hinterlands. Udarangrans hailed from the frozen tundra and violent steppes. Hardship was a comfort to them. Subjugation, less so. To combat increasing violence with the nomads and allay deep mistrust harbored by the hallowed sentinels against the barbarians, the king of Mornstead offered to the Udarangrans this wild landscape in exchange for fealty. A deal struck, an oath made. The Udarangrans settled into their newly endowed and expansive fief of Kinrangr. Generations later, and clues to Kinrangr's origin and barbarian ancestry can still be found within the fief's tundra. Many items mentioning these proud people are well dispersed, such as the Glacier Ring, a ring featuring a jewel carved from the unmelting ice of Udarangr. This ring increases frostbite resistance, which is an obvious benefit in the Chill curse, but we must be reminded that Kinrangr's lands have yet to be frozen at this time. The item's hidden lore reveals its native roots. In easternmost Udarangr, there exists vast glaciers of a particular type of ice, which possesses inherent magical properties, making it incredibly valuable to some, although no less difficult to procure. More connection is found in the chest near the vestige of Sfornell, which contains the Shield of Thunder. A wooden shield fashioned in Udarangr, whose hidden lore references the tumultuous time surrounding Kinrangr's ancient founding. While most Mornstead natives were quick to accept the immigrants from Udarangr after they settled in the kingdom, the hallowed sentinels always remained suspicious of their unorthodox cultural roots. Finally, there is the Udarangr shaman bow, pilfered from a corpse within the fief. Skill with a bow was vital to the Udarangran shamans, who lived in the wild as they needed to hunt not only to survive, but also to kill those creatures whose flesh, bones, skin, or organs possessed properties useful to the shaman's primal magic. This item mentions two things of great import. First, it highlights the cultural reliance on and ability with ranged weapons of the Udarangrans, a skill passed to Kinrangr's future generations. Second, it makes passing mention of shamanic magic. This knowledge is brief, but plants the seeds of substantial consequence as our story progresses into its bleakest moments. But more on that later. Years, generations, lives pass as the Udarangran nomads slowly forget their ancestral transience and fully embrace the lands of Kinrangr, establishing for themselves a new identity born of natural ferocity, cunning, and unquestioning loyalty. Their forest becomes sacred, and the hunters that vigilantly patrol its borders are recognized across the kingdom as the quintessential rangers. Kinrangr trackers are legendary. They stalk silently, and every arrow loosed finds its target. In fact, the first time we hear of the Fief at all, and its illustrious hunters, is in the very early moments of the game, in the armor and weapons of the Blackfeather Ranger. The Blackfeathers are elite, even for Kinrangran standards. Their order hunts game within the verdure as well as poachers or other interlopers wishing to harm the forest. The inimitable ability of the order is heard in the Blackfeather Ranger bow. The Blackfeather Rangers were renowned for their incredible accuracy with bows, and while few ever competed in Mornstead archery contests, those who did often emerged victorious. These hunters, and likely most of Kinrangr, revered the black crows that circled the skies above and nested within the canopy as sacred animals. This is quite intriguing, for if we review the crow's literary and cultural symbolism, we're struck with a mixture of good and bad fortune. Its negative imagery represents death, illness, and misfortune, an allusion to the Fief's future fall, no doubt. But the crow is also an intelligent bird that evokes such ideas as loyalty, isolated self-reflection, wisdom, and rebirth. Many of these present in the Kinrangran people. So iconic is the bird that the Blackfeathers draw their name from and weave its feathery plumage into their ranger outfit, to show respect and to bestow the crow's boons upon them. These details are displayed by a close scrutiny of the Blackfeather Ranger chest armor. Even the Kinrangr standard and coat of arms depict a crow's wings, which we see in tatters strewn throughout the Fief's rubble, stamped into the metal of the Kinrangr leader axe, and the bird entire is perched atop the frozen Fief key item, which grants the Deathless One access to the region. The crow will make a symbolic return in Kinrangr's most dire hours surrounding calamity.
Sometimes I envy you and your woods, Yorke. A blessed peace. Perhaps I'll just damn the whole mess, toss my crown into the gorge, and live out here as a hermit.
You'd find me a wise and fair ruler.
Well, you learned it from me, after all.
But you'd
More time passes, and the bond between Mornstead and its fief strengthens to steel. The kings of Brammis Castle rely on Kinrangr tenacity in countless campaigns against external threats, and especially against the demonic legions of Rogar that later scour the land. Always Kinrangr answers the call. Always do their hunters and warriors join the fray. This earns them much respect and autonomy from Mornstead. Kinrangr's people are proud, self-sufficient. They prefer to live off the land and remain to themselves, a wish that is granted by each successive generation of monarchy. This sentiment comes to us in the item description of the Blackfeather Ranger ring, while again praising the order's skill. Although the fief was under the protection of the Mornstead military, the citizens of Kinrangr always preferred to rely on themselves, and none knew how to hunt and fight in their woods and valleys better than the Blackfeather Rangers. Kinrangr's own ducal leadership passes from warrior to warrior, handed down for generations through ceremonial gifting of a heavy axe that reminds all of their fierce and barbaric cultural roots. Many leaders administer the fief during its golden age period, push it to illustrious heights of fame and envy, carve a legacy of loyalty earned through blood. But this bountiful land, these prominent hunters, will fall swiftly and terribly into death's frozen desolation that looms on the horizon. Tragedy strikes Kinrangr during the reign of Lord Yorke.
King Yorke the First has a certain ring to it, don't you think?
I'll bear that in mind.
Yorke is a peerless leader, known among his people for his equanimity and munificence. He's a kind man with a heart full of sentiment. This enhances rather than detracts from his role as warrior, for Yorke fights with unyielding tenacity for those he loves. He risks life, he swallows pride, and exudes inspiring passion to lead the people of Kinrangr in peace and in glory. Despite this, the role of Lord is difficult for Yorke to embrace. A man content to hunt through wilderness and live out his days in isolation is ill-suited for the intrigues of court. Ill-suited to be bombarded by sycophants and counselors, to be entrusted with the shepherding of thousands. A man who desires nothing more than the life of a backwoods tracker finds himself instead at the center of Kinrangr politics, struggling greatly with leadership's burden. This isn't Yorke's only difficulty. The man without a family of his own is swiftly cast into the role of father for his niece Lucy, who is orphaned at an early age by the deaths of her parents. The awkward, independent Yorke hasn't the first idea how to care for and raise a child. He flounders constantly with all endeavors, which we hear in the item description of Yorke's ring. While Yorke had never found the role of leader to be a particularly easy one to bear, he struggled far more with his role as a father figure to his orphaned niece. Nonetheless, he showers Lucy with adoration and bestows significant largesse from deep wells of his kind heart. Yorke's affection for his niece is unbound, and as their relationship grows, he dotes constantly upon her, striving hard to ease her past trauma. But soon, a darkness grips Yorke. A profound abyss of agony and desperation pulls him to despair's depths. The impetus arises from a mysterious ailment that afflicts the young girl. Perhaps this is an illness suffered by her parents before they ultimately expired. Through discovery in the manse of the hallowed brothers, we learn that vile plagues accompanied the emergence of Rogar demons in Mornstead. Its likely outbreaks of pestilence racked Kinrangr's populace. Whatever its origins, the sickness infects Yorke's niece. First, he relies on traditional medicaments offered by healers, but trust in these evaporates as fever and fits of coughing progress unabated. Resolved to save his darling child, Yorke next pursues the healing balms found within Aureus Radiance. Clerics from the Orian Church arrive in Kinrangr to cleanse the ailing girl. The prayers, salves, and incantations again prove impotent. The coming weeks see the child's condition worsen. Now bedbound and feeble, Yorke refuses to leave Lucy's side. The distraught lord exhausts every avenue, seeks all known treatments to no avail. His niece is dying with the passing hours. How far will love take one? To what lengths will torment be suffered before one breaks? How deep in agony can one soul withstand? All these questions swirl through Yorke's mind. On the brink of resignation, word reaches the Lord's ear of an ancient ritual lost to time and cast in shadow. Old traditions and old gods exist within Kinrangr's cultural bedrock in the form of the Udarangran shamanism. Nomadic mystics once engaged in bestial worship, sinister witchcraft, the most treasonous of desecrations, interaction with Umbral, realm of the dead. Remnants of such practices exist in the item description of the previously mentioned shaman's bow, as well as in the bestial appearance of the Kinrangr's rebel hammer, the skull and bones of which hearken to occult practices. It's these practices Yorke now wishes to beckon to save Lucy, but knowledge comes moments too late. Yorke's niece has breathed her last and lies lifeless in bed. Grief, a word inadequate to convey the torment that eats Lord Yorke's soul. The proud Kinrangran leader is reduced to shattered, sniveling despondency. This umbral scouring highlights Lucy's funeral procession, the unsettled Yorke. Notice especially the crows shadowing on the periphery, symbols of death and ill omens yet to come. Denial consumes Yorke. The man is unable to process his failure. He couldn't save his Lucy from death, but perhaps, with Udarangran magic, he can imbue new life within her. Kinrangr's tradition sets funerary caskets adrift in the neighboring waters, allowing the tide to take the dead beyond. Under cover of darkness, Yorke orders retainers to drag Lucy's waterlogged casket from frigid depths and retrieve her corpse. The macabre scene is preserved in the item description of Lucy's funerary dress and mask of the drowned. They read, "The fish had already begun to feed on Lucy's corpse by the time it was found and dragged from the water, and those others present could only abide the dreadful cry which erupted from Yorke's throat as he looked down into the girl's face. A path from which he cannot return is laid before Yorke. His desperation compels him to take it. No sooner does he remove Lucy's corpse from the water than he takes the disfigured body to an old healer versed in Udarangran ritualism. He demands she perform umbral rites to resurrect his niece. These events unfold before us in this umbral scouring.
My lord, I'll say once more, if you'd heed my skills, then also you should heed my warning.
Can you do it or not?
I know enough to try, but I've made clear the risks, both in the casting of the magic itself and what might be the results.
Bring her back.
A transgression is committed in Kinrangr. The light of Axiom is defiled as umbral magic pulls a soul from beyond death. Yorke has performed terrible sin, tampered with a force he cannot comprehend, and placed his entire fief in danger, all for his beloved niece. The ritual, however, is not what it promised. Yes, life once more flows in the corpse before him, but the wretched flesh is not his niece. Lucy's soul doesn't dwell within. A monster of torment and pain is born from umbral magic, a twisted simulacrum of the girl. Such anguish is retold in the remembrance of the Hollow Crow item description, pilfered from the grotesque beast upon its death. More on its connection to Lucy forthcoming. The item reads, "Unable to accept how he had failed Lucy, Yorke tampered with the primal magic of Udarangr, almost entirely forgotten by his people after generations in Mornstead. But what returned to Yorke was not his niece, but a mockery of life. And so his eyes turned towards one final, even more desperate gamble." But what is this final gambit, this last act of a grief-bound and broken man? It is the act that seals forever Kinrangr's doom and casts relentless chill upon the land.
Then I suggest you venture into the woods. Unnaturally frozen and home to terrors they may be, but they also contain one of the beacons to which you've dedicated yourself. And who knows what other treasures might be found there beneath the snow and ice.
The fief surrounds one of the 5 radiant beacons of the Sentinels, the holy magic of which has for 1,000 years kept Adir, the demon god, imprisoned. These beacons are renowned for their purity. Aureus' cleansing light permeates undiluted from their luminous vortices. Lord Yorke gazes upon the brilliant pillar, and what he sees is opportunity. If Aureus is the divine creator, and the beacons are fonts of untarnished holiness, perhaps their magic is enough to cleanse Lucy. Yorke chains the monster he created within its casket and drags it to Kinrangr's beacon, heaving it into place at the base. By a close scrutiny of the beacon, we can indeed see the casket no doubt belonging to Lucy, chained in thick steel links. Yorke's gambit, however well-intentioned, ends in disaster. Unbeknownst to the Lord, and indeed much of Mornstead, the beacons of the Sentinels have been corrupted by Adir's malignancy, as he struggles to break free. Thus stained, the magic emanating from Kinrangr's beacon is not pure and radiant. What courses instead through the casket and corpse is demonic blasphemy. The chaotic nature of Rogar magic mingles with the umbral rites of resurrection to create something truly infernal, something of nightmare none could have predicted. An unhallowed blizzard descends upon Kinrangr. Winds whip, snows fall in such a torrent that blood coagulates, lakes freeze, and the very light of life is snuffed. Yorke's desecration spawns a terrible curse that inundates the fief in permanent frost so swiftly that most are consumed instantly. Unfortunately, death is not the end of their suffering. The Kinrangr oaths of fealty are twisted by the curse to forever bind them in frigid undeath. The terrible tragedy encapsulated in the item description of the Kinrangr Guardian Axe. Those citizens of Kinrangr who had sworn an oath to protect their homeland had little time to comprehend their failure as the merciless frost swiftly engulfed them. The final chapter in Lord Yorke's fall sees him hunted and slain by his own men who cannot believe he caused such dark atrocity. Lucy, his cherished niece, completes a final transformation that binds her soul to an ungodly wraith in the shape of a grotesque crow. Yorke, struck with horror as his fief collapses, drops his symbolic leader's axe and flees from his failure. Unfortunately, the disgraced lord's flight is brief as he is apprehended in the dell just outside city walls. The location of Yorke's ring signifies the place where he was hacked apart by none other than the Blackfeather Rangers, aggrieved by his deep and blatant blasphemy. This act is written in the item description of Blackfeather Ranger Axe. It reads, "Perhaps one of the darkest episodes in the history of the Blackfeather Rangers occurred when they were forced to hunt one of their own, following his descent into deranged rituals and gruesome murders." There is, however, an alternate ending for Yorke, no less brutal, that can be gleaned from the nature of his final resting place. As mentioned, it's safe to assume Yorke's ring would lie with its namesake, and by close inspection of skeletal remains, we see thorax, head, arms, and legs all ripped from each other. This could have been the gruesome hacking perpetrated by Black Feathers, but it could also be the bestial feeding of a fiend of depravity. Perhaps the Hollow Crow, after coming into existence, hunted its creator to this field and plucked the flesh from his bones. If we look closely, massive, black feathers of an avian line Yorke's body, and the trees of the field seem to have been flattened by terrible gusts. This alludes to the Hollow Crow leveling the ground as it circles its prey. Whatever the events, it can be said with certainty that Lord Yorke's final chapter is closed with bloody, dreadful, and forceful finality. By the time the Deathless One cracks open its chilled doors, the noble land of Kinrangr has been swallowed completely by snow, replaced as the fief of the chill curse. Its tortured duty-bound moan hollowly in eternal penance for their lord's failure, a cautionary tale to those who would play at God and resurrect the dead. But how are we certain the curse originates from Umbral, the forsaken realm of darkness? Aside from the clues thus scoured, the innocuous Frostbite Salt's consumable item that adds status to weapons imparts significant revelation. It and the Frostbite Resistance Balm are plentiful in Kinrangr, not solely for the benefits of navigating a place so harrowing and frigid. Their hidden lore grants insight into the fief's fate. Reading, "Some in Axiom who experience the influence of Umbral feel a deep, gnawing cold as part of it, a primal chill, both hollow and hopeless. This is the same gnawing cold that bellows unrelenting across the snowy dunes of the Fief of the Chill curse. By interacting dangerously with Umbral, Yorke disintegrated the veil between realms and permitted the primal chill purchase in the mortal realm, manifesting in a bitter frost that damned his people and ruined his land. As the Deathless One progresses through Kinrangr's frozen haunts, the foreboding and hopeless aura is abundant, all-pervasive. The undead, driven mad from torment, strike out against the interloper, as do the beasts once native to the forests that have since undergone chilling transformations. But death hasn't diminished Kinrangr's martial skill. The silent hunters stalk dangerously, and the guardians strike with axes frozen solid from unnatural malice. Navigating the Fief of the Chill curse reveals Lucy's ultimate, terrible fate. A massive crow, devoid of all warmth and life, sits atop a shattered throne and rules a land entombed in ice. But this crow, whose symbolism weaves through Yorke and Lucy's tale, is indeed bound to the girl through infernal umbral magic. The child's spirit lingers, unable to fade completely from this realm, and exists within the hollow crow. The entity's connection to Umbral is manifest in the chilling sorcery and frost attacks they employ against the Deathless One. Only through use of the infernal lamp, itself charged with umbral magic, can they flay Lucy's soul, rip it from the monstrous hollow crow, and grant the tortured girl eternal rest. Kinrangr, once the jewel of Mornstead, supported and was protected by skilled warriors of ancient ancestry. For generations it thrived, until grief consumed one man, and in his relentless pursuit to seize salvation for the one he loved, consigned his entire people to the cold oblivion of an infernal curse. Now it stands as a warning. Its towns lie vacant, its forests petrified in ice, its citizens doomed to forever walk the line between life and death. The Fief of the Chill curse stands as a deadly testament to the consequence of intent. It is Lord Yorke's ultimate failure. Above it all, the cause of a twisted beast carry on winds of ice and abandon. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this video on Lord Yorke, his niece Lucy, and the origins of the curse that plagues Kinrangr in Lords of the Fallen. Now I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts on Yorke's actions. Were they justified? As well as your insights into the chilled Fief. And be sure to write suggestions for future videos in the comments below. If you're a fan of lore and storytelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the podcast where content is uploaded frequently. I want to thank my amazing supporters over on Patreon who make all of this possible, and I couldn't do it without their fantastic support. If you'd like to become a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, written scripts, and early video drops, head to patreon.com/thelorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.